Well, they've locked out their employees because the union threatened to strike.
Okay.
So for railroads, you have to kind of shut down operations safely to make sure that not only your employees can be get home, but also the equipment is safely stored. So that's kind of what we've seen happen. That's obviously going to impact volumes of the Canadian rails, both Canadian Pacific and Canadian National. They make up around 25% of originated carloads in North America.
Wow.
And the impact will be felt across the supply chain because it's not just a Canadian thing. It's also going to impact the rails that they interchange with. And also both Canadian Pacific and Canadian National also go into the United States. CP also goes directly into Mexico. About a third of Canadian National's volumes or revenues, I should say, are tied to cross-border traffic. So, it's not just going to be impacting Canada. How we see it playing out is that these kind of work stoppages don't last that long typically. Usually they're usually forced into some sort of arbitration. When it starts really impacting the economy, the Canadian government kind of took a hands-off approach going into Thursday when the deadline was there. They might take more of a kind of a direct approach now that freight is stopping to flow. And for the railroads, the two railroads impacted, it's going to impact their earnings. A lot of the freight is going to be just delayed. It's not necessarily going to be lost, but some of their, more truck competitive freight, like intermodal, that's a little more time sensitive, could get lost to other modes, namely trucks.
You've also talked about how, due to the different labor disruptions, shippers have been diverting freight from those Canadian ports toward the U.S. West Coast. So what I'm wondering is who kind of wins and who loses from this? Because you've also talked about how this sort of situation has helped boost Union Pacific and other sort of intermodal traffic in recent weeks.
Yeah, so how we see this playing out is who's going to benefit. Well, if it's freight that's headed into Canada that's going to end up in the United States, it's not going to go into Canada because the steamships are going to avoid those ports due to the work stoppage. So they might try to bring that freight into Southern California or the Gulf Coast and the East Coast. But that being said, the Gulf Coast and East Coast are also facing, those ports are also facing their own labor issues. They have a contract that comes up in September 30th with their unions. And right now, there doesn't seem like there's an agreement, at least in the near term. So, a lot of shippers have been redirecting their freight to Southern California. So then who wins? Well, big winners would be Union Pacific and Burlington Northern, and also in Burlington Northern, that's a wholly owned subsidiary by Berkshire Hathaway. And so also some of the intermodal players might benefit too, because you'll have maybe longer lengths of haul, which should drive higher revenues for the players. And also, we expect to see a little bump in truck spot load rates next week. As maybe more and more capacity might be needed to move that time-sensitive freight that's being impacted by the Canadian labor strife.
Lee, I wonder if is this time of year particularly crucial? I'm thinking about the retailers maybe stocking up their shelves, getting ready for the holiday season. Was this time period chosen, or is this just happenstance?
This is happenstance. This
Okay.
is just like when their contract came up. And not all labor issues have been terrible this year. CSX yesterday announced that they reached an agreement 4 or 5 months ahead of their deadline with about 25% of their unionized workforce, which included a 3.5% pay increase on an annual basis over the next 5 years. So it's not all bad news for labor, it's not all bad news when it relates to labor, I should say. But we hope that things in Canada come to a close and the rails get back to work, not only for the economies involved, but the people involved as well.